Iconoclasm in recent history. Communist iconoclasm. As we mentioned, there was iconoclasm in the French Revolution, and more recently in the Communist Revolution in Russia, and Communist China's Cultural Revolution. The latter, the Cultural Revolution, is officially titled the Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution. It was carried out by young people, college students and the like, who marched around dressed alike, act like a paramilitary group, vandalizing and destroying icons, art, cultural artifacts, and anything that would indicate the past. Like Antifa, they had a name for those who engaged in these activities: the Red Guard. And as with Antifa, iconoclasm escalated to physical violence. As with Antifa in leftist front cities, the authorities were generally told to stand back as these playground army kids, play-acting soldiers, this communist mob, these street terrorists destroyed and shed blood. This was to drag the Communist Party, or the Chinese Communist Party, further to the left. That was what Mao was trying to do with this. So they had already, decades earlier, they had already achieved their communist revolution, but Mao was like, we need to give the young kids in on this and drag things further to the left. So he was using it to gain more power in the party. So as to drag them further left, moderate leftist politicians were replaced with radical leftists. And this may call to mind the fact that regular Democrat Party politicians in America are being replaced by members of the National Socialist, a term that's rendered National Sozialistisch, or Nazi in German. Now, this may call to mind the fact that regular Democrat Party politicians in America today are being replaced by members of the National Socialist Party, known as the Democratic Socialists of America. So people like Bernie Sanders and AOC, or Cortez, there's some sources to back that up right there. All right. Now, thing is, AOC is officially a Democratic Party member, right? But she's also a member, just like Bernie Sanders is, of the DSA. And you can see on their very own websites right there. So they have to officially be like, well, you know, I'm on that side of the aisle in Congress. I'm officially part of the Democrat Party. But I'm also a registered, or I'm also officially part of the Socialist Party. It's a National Socialist Party, by the way. Democratic Socialists of America. If you're saying of America rather than the world, that technically means that you're a nationalist party, right? And you're socialist, which is what the Nazis were. They were a National Socialist-ish party. And they also said democracy, everybody, right? So there you go. And it may amuse one to note that one of the official goals of the Cultural Revolution, getting back to the Chinese communist situation there, was, quote, to provide China's youth, get this, everybody, quote, to provide China's youths with a revolutionary experience and to achieve some specific policy changes. So dragging it further to the left, so as to make the educational, healthcare, and cultural systems, unquote, more equitable. Sound familiar? Isn't that what these street terrorist Antifas are doing, pretending that they are revolutionaries while actually just throwing toddler fits, but still managing to shed blood, while the leftist authorities stand back and let them destroy statues and monuments and so on? Also, as with Antifa, there are many factions of the Red Guard, not all with totally aligned stances, and no one official overarching Red Guard organization with one head at the top. So one could say that the Red Guard was just an idea and not an organization. Does that sound familiar? Proto-Antifa's blow-up cultural icon, the Thinker. Now, I think I'm going to skip over this, but folks, in 1970, the Antifa-like group, the Weather Underground, they were first named the Weatherman, but that was deemed too sexist. So the Weather Underground, they blew up one of the very few molds of Rodin's famous statue, the Thinker, once part of a greater set of representing images from Dante's Inferno. You can and it was part of the Gates of the Hell. It's a great thing. But the weathermen of the One Underground blew that up. And it was part of terrorism because they were basically saying, look, we're going to scale this up if you don't meet our demands. And indeed they did. Scale it up to violence. Or at least attempts at. I mean, they blew themselves up, at least. After much... Okay, so I do want to skip over this. I'm tempted to go into that, but I can't go into everything. Also, if you click here, I don't know why that's not shown there, but if you click right there, I have a video about that that I made in 2017. With some music, too. Next chapter here. Muslim extremists destroy historic icons. According to Arthur Goldwag, page 237 in the book Isms and Ologies from 2007... He writes, quote, the Taliban destruction of the massive Buddhas of Bamiyan, if I'm saying that right, in Afghanistan, 1,500-year-old statues carved into cliff faces, is one of the most notable acts of iconoclasm of our own day, unquote. And you folks may know that. It's famous to see some of these images, and this is just one. And you can see how big those holes there, those are windows and doors for human beings. This is many stories tall. All right, and they are systematically destroying. You could see the scaffolding there. They're destroying the legs, going up or down, destroying the leg to destroy most of the face. And also, people live there too. They've lived there for centuries. Those are windows and doors. Okay, and here you can see they got the whole statue in this case. In this photo. Lucinda Durbin writes in Iconoclasm in the Islamic State are for Friends of Astor, Volume 3, Number 8, August 2015, that in the spring of 2015, quote, ISIS posted several videos on the internet showing militants destroying centuries-old artifacts and buildings in northern Iraq, the region that since the summer of 2014 belongs within their so-called caliphate, quote-unquote. The first video showed iconoclasts destroying artifacts in the Archaeological Museum of Mosul, if I'm saying that correctly, Iraq's second most important museum after the National Museum in Baghdad. In later recordings, we saw them assaulting Nimrud and Hatra, the primary archaeological sites from where the museum artifacts originated. And you can see there's stills there of a video of them pushing these things over and destroying them. I show that in the video that I linked to above there, by the way. It's horrible stuff. But at least it's not physical violence, but damn, it's horrible to see. This is going back to Assyrian stuff, so that's considered, even though it's design, it's pagan, and it's representation, I think, of plants, I'm not sure. But they go on to write, the world reacted in shock to this deliberate destruction of Iraqi heritage, and many fear this is only the beginning of ruthless destruction of all archaeological sites in IS territory. But why is ISIS deliberately destroying cultural heritage? The media frequently suggests that this is nothing but barbaric behavior, senseless destruction without any thought or reason other than religious fanaticism. The truth is far more complicated. This is not the first time that statues and buildings have been destroyed on such a scale. History is full of examples of iconoclasm. While none of these historical events is identical to what is currently happening in the Middle East, they do show that iconoclasm is often the result of religious, political, and economic factors. And here you can see he's destroying one of the cherubs, or whatever they would call it. All right, these are the beings that are both lions, eagles, human, and bull. You know, and those of you familiar with tarot or other symbols in the West, you get the four elemental, I forget what they call them, but say on the world card of the tarot deck, you got the human, you got the eagle, you got the bull, and you got the lion, representing also the four, the lion's fire, the bull is earth, etc. Eagle ends up being, oddly enough, water, and man, air, I think, unless I have that backwards, I'm not sure. But, there you go. That's going back to ancient Assyria, and they're destroying that. Okay, and cherub, of course, goes on to be an archangel or, one of the elemental archangels. Here's some horrible destruction going on in Nimrud, right there. You can see the IS flag flying high over the destruction. They go on to say, idol worship. In recent videos, a theologian of Islam, ulema, explained that the statues are being destroyed because they are shirk, expressions of idol worship and polytheism that must be eradicated. The cleansing of Islam of any foreign and corrupting elements is an important element of the jihadist ideology of ISIS. In an attempt to emulate the Prophet Muhammad, who destroyed statues of idols, ISIS wants to eradicate all forms of religious expression that are not in line with their interpretation of Sunni Islam, unquote. She goes on to explain how the second commandment prohibits the creation of representations of anything in heaven or on earth or in the water so as to prevent idolatry. And here you can see more examples of them destroying ancient stuff right there. And she goes on to talk about this, and she, among other things that you can read there, she writes, like Sufis and Shia Muslims, in some cases, historically important structures are destroyed, such as the monument of the Armenian genocide in, however you say that, unquote. Now, I'm writing here, perhaps they would rather that people are not reminded of the Armenian genocide, which, by the way, was waged by a group of Turkish Muslims called the Young Turks. There you go. Horrible imagery right there, photographs. In some cases, the bones are so mixed up, they couldn't really tell how many bodies there really were there. That's from the Encyclopedia Britannica, by the way. Is it a coincidence that there is a propaganda outlet that bears the name The Young Turks, whose main host, Cenk Uygur, is Turkish, and who has denied the genocide of the Armenians waged by the Young Turks who were Turkish, and whose secondary host, Anna Kasparian, is Armenian? Is that a coincidence? Or is that some sort of weird, sort of Stalin-esque setup? Or like Mao, the way he set up that second-in-command guy for years until, you know, he slaked his thirst for a cruel revenge, as Stalin would say. Wow. Dervin continues, and I shan't go into all that because, you know, I think I'm trying everybody's patience, including Tabby, so thank you, everyone. But, you know, but anyway, check this out. That is a horrible thing to see.